even around age 30 to 40, we begin to lose muscle. From 40 to 60, that's 20%. We lose a little bit less than 1% per year. Our metabolism does not slow down through menopause. Strength training will help because that's helping maintain your muscle, which is your metabolically active tissue.
So today I'm excited to zero in on the topic of nutrition for older adults. And I'm super excited to sit down with Heidi Skolnik. She's a certified dietitian nutritionist and author of 4 books, including The Whole Body Reset, which is a guide for optimal health for older adults at midlife and beyond. So welcome to the podcast, Heidi.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you so much. You know, I had the pleasure of hearing about you and learning about you when I interviewed your co-author, Stephen Perrine, for The Whole Body Reset.
Well, he's fabulous. So that was, I am sure, a fun interview.
It was super fun and, just really impressed with your expertise as well. So I'd love to learn more about your involvement with that book and also your work that you do.
Sure. Well, I'm actually a sports nutritionist and exercise physiologist, and have known Steve for years and years and years, since our early days.
Okay.
And, as you know, in his role with AARP, and he had this great concept to write this book, and he gave me a call, and it was such a wonderful collaboration. Yes. And he's an excellent writer, and I'm a science nerd. And so, together we were able to create something I think pretty wonderful. And this idea that our bodies do change and our needs do change as we get older. And really, I don't think there's been a lot of focus on that. I think it's changing now, but there really hasn't been a lot of focus. And he was wise in recognizing that there was a need and a desire to learn more and understand more about that. And of course, I've been sitting in science talks and learning all about it, but did not have that platform to give that information out. And so, it was a great thing to be a part of.
That's awesome. Well, I definitely learned a lot about the book, and I'm interested in kind of delving into more of the information in it. Now, let's just kick it off by just talking about, can you tell us, what are the differences between nutritional needs for seniors or older adults and younger adults?
Yeah, sure. So first, as it relates to protein, one of the things that happens as we age, and really it begins, when we talk about seniors, what does that mean? What age is that? Like, I don't know. Do you feel that way?
Right.
What does that mean? But really, 30 to 40, we begin to lose muscle. That is a natural part of aging. We lose a little bit less than 1% per year, which on any one year may not feel like a lot, but when you think about that, from 40 to 60, that's 20%. It's a lot. And by the time you're in your 80s, you could have lost 50% of your muscle. And our muscle is our metabolically active tissue. It's really what drives our health and our function.
Right.
So maintaining that muscle is really important. It's the cornerstone of our health. So one of the things that happens, not only are we losing muscle, but it's called anabolic resistance, which I know is like a big word, and you kind of go blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
but what that just means is, when you're younger, you're in a growth phase, right? You grow. You don't need to do much. You eat and you're building muscle.
Yeah.
But when we get older, we're breaking it down and we become more resistant to actually putting it on. Wow. So we need a little bit more protein to press that muscle building button.
Okay.
And we also, the distribution, so how much we need and the distribution of when we eat our protein becomes so much more important.
Right. So let's delve into that. Like, how much protein should an older adult have and when?
So ultimately, it is based on how much lean mass. Most of us don't know our lean mass. So the general recommendation that reaches the most amount of people, but it would be based on your weight. So a smaller person, a little bit less, a larger person, a little bit more. But basically 25 grams of protein at each meal, and 30 grams if you're a male, 25 if you're a female.
And this is breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right?
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now, it's not a high protein diet, right? It's about how we distribute it. Most people just don't really get much at breakfast. Think about that, whether you're eating a donut or whether you're eating even oatmeal, which we know is obviously a nutrition positive food, but there's not a lot of protein in that. So it's really, and then at lunch, you might grab something, you may or may not, and it's just usually not quite enough. And then at dinner, people tend to overeat protein. So it's not that they're not getting their protein needs met throughout the day, by the end of the day, it's how it's distributed.
Right.
And that distribution is really important.
Can you talk a little bit more about why that is? Is it have to do with how our bodies are able to only process a certain amount of protein, in a given time?
Yeah, we're breaking down, building up, breaking down, building up, and we need to we don't really store protein very well. Like you store carbohydrate. If you don't use it, it's still sitting there in your muscles, right? So that's one of the reasons why if you're sedentary, you don't need as much carbohydrate. If you're active and you're using, you need more carbohydrate. Whereas with protein, we just don't store it for all that long. We use it, right? We'll use it for other things. Protein is for way more than just building muscle, but but we need those amino acids, those building blocks throughout the day.
Throughout the day,
right?
I see. Right. Okay.
And it's not hard to get. We're talking about having, protein foods are like Greek yogurt. A cup of Greek yogurt is 20 grams, right there. Or having, not one egg or two eggs, but it's really, 2 eggs, like a cheese omelet with some whole grain toast. Like you can mix and match to get it in with some avocado.
Right.
And when you think about it, some people think, I can't eat that much in the morning. Right. But my experience has been that people tend to undereat during the day, they overeat at night, then they're not hungry when they wake up. Whereas when they start to move their calories down in the day, it's easier, actually it's better for sleep, and it's easier for them to then wake up hungry.
So
and also something like, grabbing a Dunkin' Donuts, like some latte, cooler, whatever that could be 700 calories.
Wow.
But nobody thinks twice about that.
Right.
But if you say eat an egg omelet sandwich in the morning, they're like, that's a lot of food.
Right. Yeah. It's a whole different mindset.
Yeah.
Right. And we're conditioned, it's like, I'm going to have a Danish or a donut in the morning, and you don't even think about and coffee.
Easy,
right.
They're easy to grab.
Right.
Grab and go. And
So that was a revelation to me to have 25 grams of protein at breakfast and at every meal. That's wow.
And how did it feel to you? Were you able to? Did you adjust? But then
I did adjust. I did it just I'll have I'll have a little bit of oatmeal, so maybe I'll have 5 grams of oatmeal, and then I'll have maybe 2 eggs, right? But then I'll try to have maybe a soy milk or something, it has more protein, so it gets me up to 20 something.
Yeah, there you go.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Now, how about eating protein? Can you eat it before you sleep, and are there any benefits to doing that?
There is some work around that the idea that before bedtime it can help with maintaining muscle, even because overnight we're not taking in calories, so we're kind of in our whole metabolism sort of slows down a bit. But there is some research to support if you're really trying to promote muscle gains and muscle maintenance, that having some protein before bed might be helpful.
Okay, and so just regarding exercise, what should people be eating before and even after exercise? Should there be a protein element in there?
So, you're making a good point, because we're talking about protein timing for people as we get older, and it is important. Even without exercise, it helps. But there is nothing that beats strength training for maintaining your muscle.
Okay.
Right? You are right on with the work that you do in helping people maintain their muscle, and including strength training, not just cardiovascular exercise in their routine. And so when you combine having your protein, using protein timing with strength training, that's the thing that's going to keep you going strong, being functional, and being healthy for a really long time. The thing about strength training, which is interesting, is one, in some ways it may increase your need for protein, but in others it better sensitizes your muscles and sort of gets you over that anabolic pump, so to speak, so that actually you utilize the protein and put it to use better.
Okay.
If you eat around, if you strength train. And we used to think that there was sort of this window of time. It does seem that window has gotten broader, even up to 18 hours after you strength train, you will utilize the protein that you take in toward muscle building.
Wow.
But as a practical measure, there's still a lot of people still, in terms of timing, think of that window right after when your muscles are sort of primed.
Right.
And so having a post protein snack might be helpful. And before strength training, it really depends when you strength train. Like if you're getting up in the morning first thing and you haven't eaten anything,
right.
But if you've had breakfast and lunch and then you're strength training in the afternoon, I'm not sure that you need to make sure you have a protein snack right before.
Okay, that's really helpful. And how about folks who are vegan or vegetarian, protein sources? Can you talk about the protein sources, animal versus plant, and how can you get it into full?
Sure. So the beauty of like the whole body reset, which I know that's not really what we're here to talk about, but we cover all of this.
Yeah.
Is it's not based on any particular like it doesn't matter what type, if you want to be vegan, vegetarian, whatever dietary pattern or practice you are, it's the foods that you finding the foods you like and reaching those goals.
Okay.
So the thing about vegan and vegetarian are very different. It's just that you then need a greater and wider variety, and you may need a little bit more because you need to get all those complete proteins. It's doable and possible. It's a lot of beans if you're vegan. And there is something about leucine as we get older, which is this particular amino acid that is more prominent in animal-based proteins that seem to be almost like the spark plug of protein synthesis. And so making sure you have adequate amounts of that, about 2 grams, and that's very technical. Most people are just eating food.
Yes.
But it is more available in more animal-based foods. But you can get it through plant-based. You really need to eat a great variety of different plants to be sure that you get in enough.
Okay, very good. So I think it gets to the idea of even protein supplements. Like whey protein, is that, do you?
Well, whey protein would not be appropriate for a vegan, let's say, because it is based from a dairy. But you can absolutely use protein supplements. Might be really helpful for people who find that just volume of food wise, it's a challenge to, or their food preferences, it's a challenge to meet their goals. Or again, sort of supplementing a food first approach with just a little bit of protein powder. Like you might put some protein powder, let's say, in your oatmeal. If you just find you're not going to have that soy milk with it or dairy milk with it or whatever. I think that protein powders can be really helpful, and it can be whey. It can be plant-based, usually like a pea protein, or it might be a combination of blended plant-based protein powder to make sure you're getting enough.
Getting that full library of amino acids, right?
Correct.
Got it. Okay. So thank you for that awesome conversation about protein. Let's talk about more just the nutritional needs for, is there specific foods that seniors should, or older adults should prioritize for, muscle, joint, bone health too, bones.
So, exactly. So we were just talking about protein, but of course it doesn't end there. So just as I said, it's really not it's not a high protein diet. We're just talking about protein distribution throughout the day, kind of protein timing. We certainly still need a balanced plate so that, each of the different food groups give us something different. And they're all important and necessary. They're just different. And sometimes we just forget. We get so focused on protein. But we still need fiber in our diet. Fiber is essential, and fiber actually helps our bones because fiber, which are found in plant-based foods, are helpful in terms of inflammaging, which is that inflammation, that chronic inflammation that happens as we age. And so different foods, plant-based foods, can really help, and certain fats can help us to sort of temper that inflammation. And one of the ways it does that is we hear so much about the microbiome, our gut health. And so those fibers found in food, those are prebiotics. We've heard a lot about probiotics over the years. Having yogurt is a probiotic. We're giving a healthy bacteria to our gut. Well, we need to feed the probiotics. And so prebiotics does that, and that's found in fiber foods. So most Americans have less than 11 grams of fiber in a day, and we really want over 24 grams.
Oh, interesting, yeah.
Now, here's a simple example of, I think, a very readily available food. Let's say you have a turkey sandwich with some mayo and pretzels as a lunch. Right? That probably has about 2 grams of fiber. A little bit, right? If you put that turkey sandwich on whole grain with some avocado and have an apple, you now have over 8 grams of fiber. 8, 16, 24. If you do that at each meal, certain small little changes can add up to a lot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And our gut health is crucial, really, again, for so many different things. Then we have, so that's understanding that healthy fats, and also healthy fats might help our muscle because, again, we're just learning more and more about the mitochondria, that powerhouse of our cells, and how they can become more dysfunctional as we age. It's not just about the amount of muscle we have, it's about the quality of that muscle.
I see.
And there may be some connection there with the types of fat we take in. Also B12.
Okay.
So B12 is also found in plant-based foods. So vegans are already taking a supplement if they're vegan.
Okay.
But many, up to 20% of more senior people
Right.
have trouble absorbing B12. And so that's probably one that is worthwhile supplementing. And it's not the more the better. You could get it in a 1-a-day multivitamin. And then, of course, we all hear about calcium, which our needs do go up because once we pass menopause, our needs become a little bit higher. It was 1,000 milligrams, and now it becomes 1,200 milligrams for females. And so, again, it just means that we're really looking at nutrient-rich food sources. And if we can't, it's definitely a food-first approach because we get so much more from any one food than the one nutrient that we're focused on, as opposed to a supplement, which is giving us that singular nutrient. So calcium and then vitamin D.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But of course, we need all the nutrients.
Yes. I will say yes. My doctor has told me definitely get more vitamin D. When you're not out and about in the sun, take a supplement.
Well, so, I mean, the idea is anyone above Georgia probably isn't going to get enough sun, right. Especially in the winter.
Right.
And then how many of us, even in the summer, some people definitely do, but others are covered up. We avoid the sun, we put on sunscreen, so we really may not be getting enough vitamin D from the sun, converting enough of it within our body. And so you certainly can get your vitamin D levels checked. If you're deficit, you may need a higher amount, and that would be between you and your healthcare provider.
Right.
But in general, even the Bone Health and Osteoporosis Foundation recommends 600 to 800 international units a day, and that's a pretty safe. Up to 2,000 really is safe supplement zone to be in without knowing your levels.
Wow. Okay. Really helpful.
Just to maintain.
Okay. Yeah. And so as we age, past 50, even hitting menopause, post-menopause, you can gain weight. It just kind of happens. So we talk about like nutritional, how we should approach our nutrition. Maybe pre and post menopause, to manage weight. I think a lot of us, they see that extra belly fat.
There is. There's a lot of evidence that supports that most women will gain about 15 pounds. I'm not. First of all, there's a redistribution of weight.
Okay.
So first, let's normalize that our bodies change.
Right.
And I know that here, the whole body reset again. Many people lost weight on it because they changed eating patterns that made a huge difference. But it is normal that our bodies are going to change with age, and I wish we could normalize that. Right. We change throughout our lifespan. Our hormonally, we actually redistribute how we lay down fat as well, i.e., some body fat, little back fat.
Right.
I find it like, wait a minute, how did that get there? That wasn't even,
I know.
So we could do a whole other thing on body acceptance.
Right. Okay.
Which would be a really interesting, thing to delve into.
Okay. Good.
And I'm not sure from eating alone that we can prevent some of that weight redistribution and some of that weight gain, but clearly strength training will help because that's helping maintain your muscle, which is your metabolically active tissue.
Right.
So our metabolism does not slow down through menopause. That's a big fallacy, right? That's it must be my metabolism.
Right.
Well, our metabolism actually stays, again, from 20 to 60 pretty stable. Right. What changes is as we lose muscle, we're losing metabolically active tissue. So our cells that are there are able to metabolize, haven't changed their ability, but because we have less muscle, our metabolism may lower somewhat, right?
Okay,
but
so
our ability isn't. So it's really strength training.
Strength training.
I grew up in a time when if you had a pair of sneakers, you would be good, right? It was the running generation, and it was the more cardio, the better, keep our heart strong.
Right.
Of course, we still want to keep our heart strong, but it's not the more the better, and it is more this balanced approach. Like, are you doing cardio a few days a week? Are you doing some maybe shorter, more intense, some longer, steady distance? Are you including that strength training 2 or 3 times? Are you doing balance exercises, which don't feel like you're working out, but are really, really important?
Right.
So I think that strength training in terms of focus around body change will help lead to more body confidence and more functional, like, that you could do what you want to do.
Right.
So whether for you it's, hiking and climbing mountains, or for me climbing the stairs to get to the second floor, whatever it is, you want to be able to do what you want to do, and it's exercise. And specifically, that strength training and cardio, the balance that will help you get there. The food supports all that.
Right. That's right. You have to have the nutrients to be able to build the muscle.
To do all that.
Right.
And then, of course, yes, your patterns of eating throughout the day so that you're not overeating at night, that your brain, your muscles, your body systems. So I think that, balance plate, how you distribute your calories can all help to prevent an age-related weight gain that just happens without us even thinking.
Right.
So I think it's more about trying to prevent how much as opposed to that we're still going to see some body changes.
Right. Sounds good.
And we're not changing our bodies. Like we're not going to all of a sudden also, like I say, our bodies change. But I mean, I think there's we live in this diet culture that is so weight focused.
Right.
And a lot of, I'm going to focus on females, but it's males too, carry with us these body image challenges that then resurface at different times in our lives.
Oh, yes.
And we never have resolved our basic relationship with our bodies and acceptance of our bodies. And so menopause is one of those times where I think body image issues might kind of come back.
Absolutely, because it's just happening. Your hormones are changing, your body's changing. You're like, what is happening? How can I change? What can I do? And you feel very helpless because it's like, what's happening to me?
Well, part of it is, again, and there's also, I also sit on the board of the National Menopause Foundation.
Okay.
So part of it is getting educated about what is happening to your body. It is something that we're talking about now, which again, for many, many years, nobody would talk about menopause, the same way we want to talk about periods, but 50% of the population.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think that, again, sort of normalizing and understanding what is happening in your body, understanding perimenopause, so it's years, it's not like a date, it's not like a day that this happens, so that you can do what you can do to feel like you do have more of a sense of what is happening and what you can do to manage it, and what you can anticipate will happen, what you can change, what you can't change. Do you want to go on hormone replacement therapy? Is that a decision that makes sense for you? What about sleep? And then how does sleep interfere with all of these other things? So there are, there are things to consider. And understand. And food, I mean, here I've devoted my life to food and eating. No, to food, to food
that's
and
a great
movement.
priority.
But it does. But that's only one. That's a vertical. And there are a lot of other things.
Right. Exactly. Now, let's talk about just diets, because we're talking about food. There's many different kinds of diets. People are bombarded by this diet, that diet, especially want to lose weight, right? What's a good approach to eating, just generally?
Yeah. So first of all, the Mediterranean diet is one that's very well researched. There's a lot of support, and even that doesn't take into account what happens as we age in terms of protein timing.
Okay.
So you can still follow a Mediterranean style pattern of eating, and pay attention to protein timing or your B12 needs or your vitamin D needs or your calcium needs. I really like to focus more on your, maintaining your muscle, maintaining your health, maintaining your function, and less on, again, weight loss. So if you're following a diet, like if I just asked you, what are all the reasons why you exercise?
Yeah.
Can you come up with?
Stay strong, stay mobile, independent, be able to enjoy life. Right? Enjoy my family.
Yeah. And then there's and when you say stay healthy, then we could go through all of those things in terms of your bone health and cardiovascular health and your blood pressure, your bone health. You might, all of things. And the same thing with food. Like why do you care about what you eat? Right. And on that list might be because it's pleasurable, because it's celebratory, because I care about my health and well-being. Yeah. So the longer the list of the reasons why, the more success you can have, right? I could check off that I'm really strong, that I could put the luggage on that top, into the bin by myself, right? That I can get up off the floor when I'm playing with my grandchildren, or again, I could go cycling. If I look at all of those reasons, weight is one, but of 20 reasons why I move. And weight is one of 20 reasons why I like to eat well. Right. And so I don't like to focus solely on weight as opposed to all of these other reasons. Yes. Right. That makes total sense. When we come back to eating, what is, again, I think it can become so repetitive, but it's not that complicated, but doing it seems that way. And that is eating regularly throughout the day, creating, our when we eat also helps set our circadian rhythm. So during COVID, it was very difficult for people who didn't have a routine sometimes to figure out when they should eat, or if they were eating or not eating, or their wake sleep cycle, because it was all messed up. And using food even as an anchor, meals, not food. Using meals as an anchor to set your circadian rhythm can also really be helpful for our mental health, for so many other things in our body. We have a biological clock, and even our organs have biological clocks. So I think that the pattern that is, and not everyone will agree in terms of that balanced plate. But again, we need all of these foods. So diets that tell you to stop eating beans, or to eliminate all dairy, or to eliminate all of anything, I am cautious of. That sends a red flag, right? And like a diet that tells you can't eat after 6 o'clock at night, regardless of when you wake up, when you go to sleep, what you do, how active you are. When your whole family eats at 7:30 and you can't eat after 6. Right. That doesn't make sense to me. Right. So regular patterns of eating, balanced meals, enjoy your food, right? Like all of these words we have around food, like, eating clean. Well, what does that mean? Like, was your food on the floor in the mud? Like what, like I want a little sauce that tastes good. Right. Or, I felt so guilty because I had a sandwich. Right. Like, it was a sandwich. Like, was it satisfying? Did it fill you up? Was there satiety? Did it taste good? So I think we fall prey to a lot of claims that actually, and practices that take us further away from our goals of health and well-being.
No, it's really interesting how you say about, hey, enjoy that food. It's you have, I think you have a quote about M&Ms, right? Yeah. Talk about like, that you could have an M&M now and then, but it's like, in moderation, right?
So you're referring to in my bio, I say that I enjoy M&Ms as part of a full meal plan, along with red meat, red peppers, broccoli, whatever. Like it's like, of course, there's different nutritional quality to foods, but a food neutral approach just sort of understands that there's room, because we know there's room, right? So it doesn't mean you're eating, you're only eating candy all the time instead of your well-rounded, nourishing meals. Okay. But it's recognizing that sometimes when I want sweet and crunchy, that means a carrot. I might want some carrots and hummus, and it's a really satisfying snack. It bridges the gap till dinner. But sometimes I want a cookie. Right. And that's okay too.
Yeah. Maybe not have 10 of them. Have one.
Well, and in fact, I think what the intuitive food movement sort of would tell you is that if you pay attention and that you have that cookie when you want it, you are less likely to eat 10 cookies later because you deprived yourself of the one when you really wanted it. But if you could be mindful and enjoy and savor the food while you're eating it, it leads to greater food satisfaction and even greater food variety.
That's interesting. And I like to, personally, I think about what I eat, in terms of how it's nourishing my cells. Like you talked about mitochondria and how, it's the powerhouse, and how everything that we eat breaks down into different elements that our body needs, whether it's amino acids or whatnot. And that's why it's so important to have that variety of foods, protein and fiber and everything. Can you talk a little bit about like how folks with chronic diseases, whether it's diabetes and I know this is getting into medical, so just kind of how a nutritional approach, that folks
sure there
take,
depending upon what your chronic disease is. First of all, there's a difference between how you're eating preventatively to support your health and well-being and not get any of these chronic diseases.
Right.
But then once you have something, there certainly are different therapeutic approaches through food. So DASH, the Dietary Advances to Stop Hypertension, is a great example of a very well-researched pattern of eating, again, that includes fruits and vegetables in certain amounts that counterbalance. Having enough potassium might help to counterbalance the effects of sodium in our system.
Right.
And magnesium, and so talking about some of these nutrients that really support. And so I think, again, that's as broad as there are chronic diseases, but learning how to help manage your situation through diet can be really beneficial and worth reaching out to a registered dietitian who could help. And then another plug for movement, again, is that they're really, exercise is medicine is part of the American College of Sports Medicine, a campaign and whole program that they have that really helps you understand how to manage chronic diseases through movement, and that there is hardly anything that I can think of that will not benefit from movement.
Yes.
Right? Even though it may be the thing you feel least like doing at times, especially when there's pain involved.
Right.
But learning how to modify and move will actually help.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Over 40 different conditions.
Right. And as we age, your tendons, everything changes. So if you don't move them, they can freeze up. Right. So it's important to just get moving.
Lubricate.
Right. Motion is lotion.
Right. Motion is lotion. Exactly. Exactly.
That's awesome. Okay. So how about like hydration and just, we're always told like, okay, make sure that you're staying hydrated. And I think for older adults that this is a real concern. And a lot of older adults don't feel thirsty. Right. So can you talk a little about how much should we drink and how should we approach that?
So that's exactly right. So one of the things that happens as we age is that our thirst regulation is like we don't sense how thirsty we are.
Okay.
And so we tend to drink less.
Okay.
And dehydration. So I think that learning to drink with meals is just a habit. Again, having your water bottle, sipping throughout the day, and small sips is helpful because it also doesn't make us feel as full, especially as appetite might begin to change as we get older. So small sips, and then so you're drinking. We absorb more when our stomachs are not empty, so partially full, and that's why small sips and drinking with meals is really helpful.
Yes, like drink a full glass. Like, is there a recommended amount of liquids that we should drink in a day?
Well, it does depend. Certain medications might, and as well, that's a whole other thing in terms of when we get older, is understanding medications and medication interactions and how that might affect your nutrition, what you should eat more or less of, which again, I think is beyond the scope of today, but do recognize checking with your pharmacist and doctor when you're on medication or multiple medications to better understand how that might impact your diet or what your needs are, and your hydration needs, in fact. And then how active you are and where you live and how much you're sweating, all of that impacts it.
Right, and the idea of electrolytes and how important is that? A lot of folks even say, "Oh, I've got cramps," and
cramping is an interesting thing because dehydration cramping tends to be whole body. Like it's not usually if there's a particular cramp, and also nighttime cramps are different. Restless leg syndrome is different. That's not a dehydration issue.
Okay.
A lot of times that's actually fatigue. As an exercise person that has to do with like firing fatigue going on, and some cramping we don't even know why it happens.
Right.
So that's really not always dehydration or lack of electrolytes. It's not like just eating a banana. That's the thing people go to. I need more potassium, but they really may need more sodium, or they may not. Or they may, depending if they're probably getting enough in their food unless they're really active. Unless they're really active, or in the mountains or in in more extreme weather, then they might need to pay attention to electrolyte balance.
Okay. Yeah. So the point is just make sure that you're drinking enough water, drink at meals, take sips during the day.
Yeah.
There's also caution not to drink too much water too as well, right? You know what?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, there certainly are some people who do carry that water bottle and are, I mean, I just had somebody in my office. I mean, I think she was taking in over like 200 ounces of whatever,
wow.
but who, like water loading. But, most people aren't going to really, you can, if you're being so conscientious to the point that you're always full, you can't eat your meals, you're peeing often, your pee is like clear. You should be peeing every few hours. It should look a little bit more like lemonade than apple juice. So if it's a good volume and it's kind of
some color,
pale yellow, low color, and it's every few hours, then you're probably doing a good job.
Okay.
If it's more like apple juice and it's very dense
dark
or small, and you go a long time without peeing, then you're probably not doing a good job.
Right. And if it's like totally clear
and often and a lot,
then
too much.
right. That's a really good real world gauge to just kind of like get an idea of what works. Yeah. Thank you. That's really good. Okay. Let's say gut health and digestion. Ooh. Let's talk about the microbiome, and like you had touched on it with fiber and how important that is. What kind of food should we be eating for a healthy gut, and why is that important?
So I feel like we did cover this. I think we just did a little bit out of order in terms of that idea that fiber in food is just what's really going to help drive a healthy mind. I mean, look, it's not the only thing, because there is things like where you live, the pollution, stress. There's, again, a lot of things that affect our microbiome beyond the food that we eat. In practical terms, it's, again, not, having more of whole grain, fruits, vegetables, nuts, and that the variety matters, not just the amount.
Okay.
So it's about the variety. So, for instance, instead of having just almonds, you might have mixed nuts. Instead of just having romaine lettuce, you have spring mix, or you have one day romaine and another day you have arugula and another day you have spinach, so that it's the variety. You don't have just an apple. Apple's a great prebiotic, but you have apples, you have orange, you have mango, that you have a variety of different types of fibers.
Right, because you hear this apple a day all the time, right?
It's a good one.
It's a good one. But you're like, have more. Have different types of
variety.
Things. Yeah, okay, very good. Do you have a favorite vegetable that you like?
Favorite vegetable?
Yeah.
I love roasted broccoli. I don't like raw broccoli. I do love roasted broccoli. Good roasted.
And like broccoli.
And carrots. I eat carrots all the time.
Right. So like broccoli has like calcium too, right? Broccoli has all kinds of like great stuff in it.
But it's really hard to get enough calcium. I mean, calcium, yes, and is a habit. But again, you're talking about you'd need 12 cups of broccoli to get. It's a cruciferous vegetable. There's other elements. Think about vegetables, fruits and vegetables. Again, anything from the sun, phyto compounds, phytonutrients there's thousands of them in our food supply, and they do all of these wonderful things in keeping our body healthy, from blocking like cancer or tumor cell growths and cells. They're keeping our eye health, like all of these different things in our bodies.
Right.
Polyphenols are really in berries, purple foods, like those are really helpful for our brain. So they do so many different things in our bodies.
Yes.
That go beyond even what we think about, like the high level that we always hear about, let's say calcium.
Yes.
Like that's one, but there's vitamin K, right, that in green leafies, and that also helps with our bone health and helps with a lot of other things. And they do multiple things in our body.
Right. So having that nice variety of greens, can just
do multiple things.
Yeah. Okay. So lots of variety. All right. Awesome. Are there any myths that you want to dispel? I think we had touched on one. We touched on one. But are there any other things that should be debunked?
Beyond myths, because there's so many. I don't. We can. But I think one of the other things that happens slowly, gradually, and then may accelerate at a certain age is, this idea of food as pleasure, and also. Right. Again, as we become more elderly, not just older.
Right.
When teeth might change, whether there be swallowing issues, whether it's economics,
Right.
whether it's an isolation. It becomes harder and harder for people if they live alone to feed themselves.
Very good
And
point.
so I think just recognizing the role that it has in terms of a shared meal and how that helps our nutrition and helps our soul.
Yes.
And so I think, really thinking about those who might need to have food assistance, those that, tips for, shopping from, the basics of buying store brand because it's less expensive, but it's really going to be very similar to any branded item. Being able to buy a little bit more in bulk because it might be less expensive, or even having someone you share food with, even if they're a neighbor, but you can buy sort of in larger quantity and divide it. Planning meals. If you have somebody in your life who lives on their own, maybe going in and making sure that they have, whether it's, tuna salad, egg salad, some chicken breast grilled, like just having the basics so that they can prepare meals for themselves readily and easily without having a heavy lift.
Yes.
Understanding that canned fruits and vegetables or frozen are just as nutritious. Their texture is different.
Yeah.
Unless you need to be careful of sodium, you might need to rinse or whatever. But that having, that's less expensive and accessible and perfectly nutritious. So I think that those are things we don't always think about, but are really important.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And now, do you have any advice for like where older adults can get good information about nutrition? Any resources that you recommend?
So the National Institute of Health.
Okay.
The My Plate, the government is basic. I think looking for things like the Mayo the Mayo Clinic or the Cleveland Clinic, if you are online, you could just, that they're going to be credible.
Okay.
They're
good sources.
Good sources.
Good reliable
universities,
sources of
major universities and hospitals. Center for Science in the Public Interest is an interesting, more advocacy group. Depends on how much insight you want into food, but they have a newsletter that I think is wonderful.
Oh, great.
I think Tufts has a newsletter as well.
Okay. Very good. And are there any other tips you'd like to share with older adults to stay healthy and eat well?
Yeah. I think simplify. Don't need to overthink it. Again, patterns. I don't know. It's like figure out your why. Like I said before, why do you figure out your why? So what is important to you? What are the reasons why? To help motivate you on days that it just seems easier to grab that donut.
Right.
So like if you remember that I want to, my heart health, I want to keep my muscle health. I want to keep my blood sugar. I want to keep my, like all of those. I want to be able to climb the stairs. I want to be able to go on that trip.
Right.
Like whatever it is. And to really focus on function.
Yes.
Not just aesthetics.
Right. Function and...
But I will say aesthetics do drive a lot of people. I get that.
Yeah.
It's good to have some pride and whatever. That's okay.
Exactly. We all want to feel good and look good. That's part of our psychology.
There's a lot,
But to your point about just accepting who you are and doing your best and, again, keeping in mind what's my goal?
Yeah.
What's your why? Right. What's your why?
Yeah.
What's your why? Well, this has been an awesome discussion. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. And is there anything else you want to share about your work that you're doing? Things that you love?
I just find this area of, aging with vitality to be intriguing. And, I've spent my last 40 years of my career really in the sports nutrition space, but I'm hoping to move more and more into this area of, I've aged in.
Right.
And so I really find it just, there's so much that we're learning. It's really an emerging field.
Yeah.
But muscle does seem to be where it's at.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I've learned so much, and I know our followers and fans will as well. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in. If you found this episode helpful, feel free to share it with a friend who might benefit from it, and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. So until next time, keep moving and stay healthy.